place for conversations. SDAQ&A. You're safe to speak your truth. Common ground, shared beliefs with lots of room for disagreement. Tell us all what you believe and let us see if we can challenge you. From all paths coming here to share their stories. Some have left this global church, some remain and defend her. Where are you on the path? Does Ellen still appeal to you? SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. 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 Oh, SDAQ&A, you are welcome here. SDAQ&A, you
love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, 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 I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello and welcome to yet another SDAQ&A. I'm your host, Peter Dixon, and it's great to be here with you today. Welcome to all those in the chat. Please share your thoughts and ideas. and inspirations as we go along. And I hope you really enjoyed today's program. Today's program is a replay of 6 years ago, the season 2, episode 36 episode, where I interviewed Fleetwood Mac, not the band, but the Des Ford superfan, I'd like to call him, and I say that respectfully. He has put together an incredible archive on YouTube of Des Ford material. I will be sharing that link very soon. But as I mentioned, Moto Sapien has sponsored today's program. Thank you so much, Moto Sapien, regular viewer of the channel. And I would, I would encourage you to go and check out this website. Now, this is Moto Sapien's desire. You know, he's, as I said, he's sponsoring today's program, and he would love for you guys to go and learn a little bit more about Pastor Maxwell and his website. He's long past, but there's some incredible videos and resources there. He's got one called Conversations About God and another, Can God Be Trusted? Particularly those two, I know that Moto Sapien would like you to go and check out. They're all available on speakingwellofgod.org. So I encourage you guys to go and support Moto Sapien by checking out that website. Now, naturally, it's not his site, but he's just hoping that by sponsoring today, we can get a lot of interest in learning about Maxwell. So today, as I mentioned, we're going back in time and replaying, first time in public, Des Ford Glacier View, Season 2 of SDAQ&A, Episode 36 with Fleetwood Mac. I mentioned he also has a channel, and where did that disappear to? Here we go. If you want to learn about Des Ford, this is a fantastic resource for you. Just look up Fleetwood 1 on YouTube, and you will have a host of incredible Des Ford videos and others. So check that out. So we're going to be listening to that interview in just a moment. Those watching, please lean forward and click that like button. It really helps. And if you'd like to support what I am doing, just go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. A couple of dollars goes a long way. It really helps me continue with this content. So thanks again to Moto Sapien for sponsoring today. Go and check out speakingwellofgod.org. And we'll now get right into this interview with Fleetwood Mac, which of course is a pseudonym. Now, apologies, the video and audio, there are some issues. This was back in the early days of going live, and yeah, you just have to live with it because the content is so good. Fleetwood Mac was there back in the day, really, you know, just lapping up the Des Ford material. And so it's a really valuable interview, this one. Here we go. Hello and welcome to SDA Q&A. I'm Peter Dixon, and my very special guest today is Mike, and we will use his is it AKA Fleetwood.
Yes.
When we came across, when I first met you on the group here, I think it was, or maybe on another one of the groups. But as you became more and more involved here, I thought, well, I love that pseudonym, Fleetwood Mac, because I'm a huge Fleetwood Mac fan.
Me too. Me too.
I absolutely, if I'm tired and I can't think and I find myself saying, "Hey Google, play some music," you know how you can talk to your little Google speaker, I will say, "Hey Google, play Fleetwood Mac." Just as my default. Boy, particularly was it the Rumours album?
The Rumors was their biggest,
Yeah.
and the most popular, and I love that album. I've got a lot of their albums, even some of the newer ones.
Yeah. Oh, I love them. I've seen them live over here in Australia several times. One of the highlights for me was because whenever they toured here, sometimes it wasn't guaranteed the actual full lineup would be here. Like sometimes Lindsey Buckingham wasn't touring, and sometimes Christine
Right.
McVie wasn't touring. Always the bass player, what's his name? He's a McVie. And
Yeah.
Mick Fleetwood would always be there, and always Stevie Nicks.
Right.
And oh my goodness, what a voice she has. But a few years ago, they toured with the full. It's funny when you say original lineup, because we do know about Albatross and Peter Green and the blues lineup from
Yeah,
England.
it was the original lineup was before Rumors.
Exactly, and the original lineup came from England,
Right.
and was what's his name, McVie on bass, Mick Fleetwood on drums, Peter Green on guitar. They had a couple of guitarists, and I think Peter Green was singing vocals. But have you heard the song Albatross that they did in that blues era? Go and check it out. It is one of the most beautiful guitar instrumentals ever written. It's absolutely beautiful. It's called Albatross, Fleetwood Mac, and it's pre the California era.
Right.
But
I was surprised to find out that that Stevie Nicks and her partner Buckingham
yeah,
were actually from California. I thought they were from England too.
as well. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah,
And but Buckingham and Christine McVie toured recently, separate from the group,
really.
and me and my wife and my two daughters went to see them locally.
Wow. Oh, that would be interesting. Were they
it was-
bitter?
Were they bitter? No,
Bitter.
no, no. I don't. I think they were gonna eventually link up. I'm not sure exactly why they were doing a separate, but they did a separate album with just them two, so they
Yeah.
were promoting that
Yeah.
at the time.
Well, I just think that particularly Rumours, like I love a lot of their stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you wanted to just find an entry point into Fleetwood Mac, Rumours is just a magically recorded too. The space, the ambience, the mix, the blend, the tones, it is just amazing.
I love albums that you can just pick it up and put it anywhere on the album, and
Yes.
you're gonna like what you hear.
Yeah,
And Rumors was that way.
exactly. Yeah.
And that's something that that I've always been partial to albums like that.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. Well, I guess we should start talking about other things.
Okay.
But look, it's terrific to have you here, Mike, and you know, we're going to chat a little bit about your life, a little bit about your observations of Glacier View, your getting to know Des Ford, the impacts, etc., that it had on you. And I thought we'd kick off by just saying, look, tell us a bit about your own family background within Adventism, and perhaps let us know how many ministers there were in your family.
Well, I think that there's only one, and he was a cousin of, I had mentioned another second cousin that worked with Des at PUC by the name of Dowell Martz. His father's brother, Jack, was the minister that did all the funeral arrangements for the family for years and years and years. He happened to be working in the Illinois Conference when I came in back into the church.
You mean the white estate?
No, he came into the Illinois Conference.
Oh, Illinois. Sorry, I thought you said Ellen White.
No, Illinois.
Illinois, yeah.
Illinois Conference, and when I got back from my trip to California, there were a lot of people concerned about my viewpoints because I had run into Present Truth, and of course Robert Brimsmead was considered anathema. So he came down to speak with me about what I was into and stuff. And I was going to college at the time where his daughter was going at Southern Missionary. And he was really nice about it. He didn't try to force the issue. He suggested that I go into medicine. He says, you'll always have work. You'll always have employment if you go into medicine. But, if you go into theology, you're liable not to have work, which I already knew. So.
But he was a theologian himself.
Yeah, and he was progressive. I have to say my family's entrance was shortly after 1888. I think it was 1889. There are two streams, the Martzes, and he was Jack Martz, my cousin, and there's another Martz who had his brother, Sam Martz, that a lot of people know because he had a Bible thing in Nashville. He also helped our musical friend, Little Richard, when Little Richard was down and out.
He was an Adventist all his life, wasn't he? Like he didn't practice Adventism all his life, but he came into Adventism as a young boy. His father was Adventist, I think, or his mother.
I'm not sure. I think it was his sister.
Right.
He kind of didn't like the no pork chops.
Yeah. But he kind of flirted in and out of Adventism his whole life.
Right.
He was even on 3ABN a few times in before he died.
Right. Yeah, I watched that, and that's where I got some of this information. But he and I met when I was interning in Philadelphia.
Wow.
He just walked into the church and just came for the service. And a musical friend of mine was there, and he goes, "That's Little Richard."
Oh my goodness! What year was this?
1981.
Wow!
And apparently, he had gone through financial difficulties. Was living with my cousin.
Oh wow!
In Nashville.
Wow!
I didn't know this at the time, but. We went up to him after the service and introduced ourselves, and he says, well, I'm having a concert later on today. Come as my guest.
Wow.
And so my wife and I and this fella musician and his wife came, and we had a great time. He treated us like we were rock stars.
Well, you and your wife are musicians, aren't you?
My wife is a musician. When I started my YouTube channel, I mainly did it to promote Des Ford and to get his videos out to people to see. And I was having trouble getting a video for my wife. She's also an artist, and she's got so many talents, it's unreal. But anyway, she kept dragging her feet, so I came up with this little GIF that looked like moving water, and so it fit with the living water theme of the song. And I thought, this is really, really ridiculous. People were going to laugh at me, but I uploaded it, and it was interesting. For the first 2 or 3 years, it did 1/3 of all the views on my channel.
Wow.
And it really established my channel before the theology people started being drawn to it.
Right.
Now hers is, I think, number 10 in the most viewed.
Wow.
But it was number 1 for the first 2 or 3 years, and then it went to number 2 for several years, and eventually a few others started popping up, and most of those are lectures from the Lanier Theological Library that I just happened to be at the right time, and suggested if they were going to videotape. I said, I have a YouTube channel. Would you like me to promote your videos on my YouTube channel? And the guy said, oh yeah, would you do that for us?
Wow.
And it just really worked out to be a wonderful boom, because I've got scholars from all over the globe that pay attention to that. I think in 6 months' time, I've had 2,200,212 views.
That's
in 6 months.
incredible. You'll have to share the link. I went and had a look at it the other day, and I'd love people to go and look at it as well.
It's Fleet WD1, and I also do, in the blurb about me, they had Fleet WD-MC. I do have that channel too, but that's live music.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of the musicians are Christians, but it's not about Christian music necessarily.
Yeah. Maybe some people watching can even share the link for us in the feed right now while we're talking. Now, so you were, you became an Adventist minister. Can you tell us what led you into the ministry?
I was dragged to college at Southern Missionary College by one of the only Adventist kids. He was an adult, but he was not from our town. I didn't have a lot of fellowship with Adventists. They basically shut the doors, trying to keep me out of any involvement in the local church.
Because you were seen as a bit of a wild hippie?
That was part of it. And then connecting with Present Truth was another part of it. But also my conversion happened while I was incarcerated for the funny smoke stuff, the flower power stuff.
The flower of power.
And so my conversion happened apart from Adventists.
Mm.
And I was more influenced by the Pentecostals that came to the jail bands. And but I also read some of the literature from Adventists as well as Mormons, and other relatives that wanted me to read this, that, or the other thing. But my conversion happened after I'd been reading the scriptures for so long. All the people in there were saying, read something else. You're reading this book like your life depends on it. And of course it did. And I said, I'm not interested in reading anything else. So they gave me a book called Run Baby Run by Nikki Cruz.
Yeah.
And
I've read that.
It has a Pentecostal element to it. And it was before my conversion. So it kind of set me up for not understanding what a conversion would be like if it wasn't like that. And so, it was kind of an interesting thing that took place. The people that were Pentecostals came in and asked if anybody wanted to accept Christ as a personal savior. I raised my hand. They took down my name. They asked me to repeat the sinner's prayer with them. And while I was repeating that, and they were praying and I was repeating what they were saying, my mind was also praying. And my prayer, silent prayer, was, is this all there is?
Wow.
Because nothing was happening, and I didn't know what was going on, but it wasn't anything like what happened to Nikki Cruz. And so I kind of was set up expecting, a dramatic experience. I don't think that that's required.
No.
I know my wife never had that type of conversion. But anyway, so I basically prayed, God, I need to know whether you exist or not. Sometime today, it'd be nice.
Now, this is while you're incarcerated.
Right. And I
what,
had
what year was this?
1971.
Right.
Late 71. And I had I'm losing track of thought now.
No, that's because I interrupted. Sorry.
That's all right. I had expected some kind of answer through the day, and I started to pray, and thoughts came into my head. What are you praying for? You're not. He's not there. You're mine.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, whoa, and it was like satanic control.
Wow.
And it was so intense that I could look at my arms, and they would go between pink, which is normal, and gray, which is dead. And it would go back and forth, back and forth. It was like something had a hold of me and was shaking me to death. And I began to remember a text in scripture that said God alone has the power of life and death. And so then I started thinking, is this God? I thought it was Satan. And I said, I want to know you by your love, not by your wrath only. Now, it's interesting that I really, truly believe that I was experiencing his wrath. Because in a way, because of my Adventist background, I was trying to work my way into his favor. Everything that I read in scripture that said, do this or don't do this, I was trying to apply all of that. And sometimes I felt really good about myself, like things were happening, you know. And other times I felt really bad. But so in a sense, the wrath thing was waking me up. And because I pled for him to see his grace and not only, you know, his love and not only his wrath, all of a sudden it was like, I just flowed into grace.
Wow.
And I started praising God and didn't remember falling asleep all night long. I thought, you know, my whole life has changed and everything is wonderful. And it was like a spiritual high for the whole evening and even into the morning. And the next morning I woke up and I thought, I'll never sin again. And even that thought was sinful, which I didn't know at the time.
The sin of conceit.
But it was quickly revealed to me, no, you're not quite there yet.
Was this following, how long after was the prayer with the Pentecostal group that you had this?
This was the night.
It was the same night of it. Yeah, you'd gone away going, I want to know by the end of the day.
Yeah, so it was Sunday night late.
Wow.
Because they came in on Sundays. It was an interesting thing. I had a lot of crazy things. The Spirit definitely was my guide. Until I came to understand the gospel, I couldn't understand how God, because sometimes I felt his presence and other times I didn't. And I couldn't figure out why this was happening. It was kind of like, you know, what's going on? Have I fallen away, you know? And so the gifts of the Spirit were really big to me. And in 1972, when I was first introduced to, you know, coming back into church and Sabbath school lessons and all of that, they were into the Spirit because the Pentecostal movement was taking Christianity by storm. The Jesus People movement and all of this stuff was happening. And a lot of my friends that I knew, when they found out about my conversion, they were going, oh no, you know, a Jesus freak. We don't need any of this, you know. They chase us down the street, you know, calling us sinners and all of this other stuff. And so my approach was much different. And I think in many ways it was much more successful. I didn't push them to talk about religion. I just hung around with them to let them know that I still cared. I had Adventists that were telling me that, you know, angels don't go into places like that. You know, you're going to fall away if you do that. But in order to make contact with the people that I had influence with, I went to all the shady places. And the interesting thing was, my friends accepted me better than the church did.
Interesting.
And I always thought when I was reading scripture, you know, it talked about the world and how the world's going to come against you and how you're gonna have all these problems with the world. Well, I was having the problems with the church, not with the world.
With the world.
As far as what I considered to be the world versus the church. And so God led me in a lot of different ways to see how he had people that weren't professing religion, that were really closer to him, and he could impress them to take care of my needs at times. My trip to California began by me reading in scripture the text where Jesus tells his disciples, take no purse, take no extra clothes or shoes or any extra anything. You know, you're going to be cared for. Just go out and do the work. And I left the house without a cent, but that wasn't because I didn't, that was mainly because I didn't have a cent to my name anyway.
And when you say leave the house, you mean you're leaving your parents' home at this stage?
Yes, and this is in Illinois. And my mom decides to drive me to the interstate in Iowa so I don't have to go through all the cities getting over to the interstate. So she drops me off, and as she's dropping me off, she says, by the way, how much money do you have? And I said, I don't have any money. And she says, what? You don't have any money? How can you do this? I would have stopped at the bank if I knew you didn't have any money. I don't know how she would have thought that I had any money.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a job, you know. But anyway, I said, it's all right, Mom. I don't really need any money. And she went through her purse and she says, well, here, this is all I could find. You take it. She gave me $15. And I gave the last $5 into the offering plate at when Robert Brimsmead came to a camp meeting. And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point, but the people that I'd been staying with wanted to give me some money for all the work that I had done. They were in the circulation department of Present Truth. And I told them, I said, look, you gave me a place to stay and you fed me and clothed me as far as, you know, that all goes. I don't really need any money, you know. They said, well, we really want to give you something. I said, okay, I tell you what, you give me $10 and take half of that and put it in the offering. That'll double my offering and I'll be able to make it home on $5. And I had 17 cents when I got into Illinois, and I had a dime for the coin phone to call my mom from the edge of town. I didn't have to hitchhike through
the city.
So it's amazing how God, and most of the people taking care of me throughout that time, there were some Christians, like, you know, the people at the Present Truth circulation department. But some of the people were not Christians at all.
Though professing to be.
And
now, this is me coming to you from 2026. We've just been watching this incredible interview with Mike, who goes under the name Fleetwood Mac. You can check out his YouTube channel where there's so many resources featuring Des Ford, and it's at Fleet WD1, Fleetwood 1. And I'm just pausing here because I want to really thank today's sponsor. It's Moto Sapien, who is a regular viewer of this channel and engages a lot with the content. And he is hoping that people will go and check out this website. This is Speaking Well of God, and it's Conversations About God with Graham Maxwell, who was a very interesting theologian within the Adventist Church. I'm guessing around the time period that Mike Fleetwood is sharing his story. I think it's fascinating listening to Mike speak. The Jesus freaks, the Jesus revolution that was permeating all of the Christian culture around the world. was setting the scene for people like Graham Maxwell and Des Ford to come into. I'm pretty sure, and Gillian can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that Des Ford would not have really seen himself as a Jesus freak person. I remember once him telling me, or her telling me, that at the time didn't even know who the Beatles were. So he wasn't part of the counterculture. And yet the people like Fleetwood and the many others who were Adventists in the late 60s, early 70s resonated super well with the Des Ford message. Now, Des Ford and Graham Maxwell disagreed on some things. Ford has said that he really valued Graham Maxwell as a human, and I think they were friends. They differed on some theological stances. But, in many ways, the material of Des Ford is a lot more accessible. And so today's sponsor, Moto Sapien, is encouraging people to go and check out Graham Maxwell's material, his videos, particularly Conversations About God and Can God Be Trusted? And they're available speakingwellofgod.org. I'm really enjoying this conversation here with Fleetwood. Let's get back into it. This is the season 2 that we did 86 episodes of with a focus on Des Ford and Glacier View. So let's continue and keep enjoying this great scene that Mike is setting as people of that counterculture movement absolutely fell in love with Des Ford's message, his gospel, his assurance of salvation teaching, that in many ways was opposite to what they had grown up with within the Adventist church. Let's continue.
And yet God impressed them.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So people that weren't Christians at all, they were still impressed by God to look out for you.
Yeah, I got picked up in the middle of Iowa by a playboy and his playmate from Chicago. They were going to ski in Aspen. Back before Aspen was really big. It was, now all the movie stars go there. But then it was not well known. But anyway, they picked me up, and I nearly had froze to death because a blizzard came through, and I was in the process of close to being dead when they pulled over and backed up. And I got in the car and I couldn't hear anything because my ears were frozen, and I couldn't couldn't communicate for a little while. And when they stopped to get something to eat, they wanted to buy me something. I said, that's all right, I have money. You don't have to take care of me now. And so my $15 actually worked to my benefit to tell people they didn't have to, buy me food or anything. And it was just strange how, that trip was over 4 months long.
Wow.
With $15.
Yeah.
And I didn't use it all.
Came back with 17 cents and then a dime to call your mum.
I gave a third away.
Yeah, that's right. Can you tell, you've mentioned Present Truth a little bit. For those that don't know what that is, can you tell us a little bit about it and how you came across it?
When I came, I was going out to California mainly to help a person. I think I had mentioned him to you when I said that people thought that I had beat him up.
Yes.
Anyway, his name was Ashton. And I was going out to see Ashton, who had been running from the military. He had been subpoenaed to be drafted, and he ran from the draft. His father was a military man, and under Richard Nixon, there was a short period of time that they offered amnesty to the people who ran. And so I asked Ashton, I heard that his father was going to turn him in if he didn't turn himself in. And so I went out to talk to him about conscience objection, because when I went through the military, I was regarded as a pinko communist bum, and went through hell and high water. And it was really strange because I did a lot of praying, but I wasn't a Christian. And although I was trying to reform my life, I knew I wasn't doing it. And so I was dead in my trespasses and sins. And, you know, they did so many things to me that were illegal that it was amazing. In fact, they tried to put me in Mannheim prison in Germany. And in order to do this, the process, I had to be interviewed. And the sergeant major that interviewed me just basically reamed me out for 45 minutes with all the accusations that the company had made against me. And, you know, who do I think of that I am, and all of this. And I'm just sitting there silent through the whole thing. And finally, he gets to the point where he says, look, he said, I've only heard their side of the argument, and you're not giving me anything. You need to tell me something. So I sat there and I thought, okay. And so I began to unfold all the illegal things that they had done to me. And he couldn't believe. He said, you're either one of two things. You're either telling me the truth, or you are completely out of your mind. Because nobody would invent all of these incidents that are illegal. And I said, yeah, well, he says, I can't take your word for it, but I will investigate it. And he had enough different people to where he could check to find out. Like one of their accusations was I wouldn't work. Well, they would put me on the worst of jobs, and I would just whistle while I worked, and I'd just enjoy myself at it, you know. And that made them worse. They were more angry that I was going along with their harsh treatment of me. And so they eventually put me on a detail that was only supposed to be one person rotating through the whole company, you know, per month. And I was on it for over a month. And it was.
And when you say company, you mean the military?
Yeah. This guy was from brigade, and the brigade, it was a brigade obligation.
Mm.
Okay, and they had their rules about how it was supposed to be distributed among the enlisted men.
Mm.
And the fact that they put me on there for a month.
Yeah.
He said that they're not supposed to do that.
So he was able to find that out when he dug.
Yeah.
When he investigated.
Yeah. So then he was able to talk to the company, the officer that was in charge of this detail. He says, "How does this guy work?" He goes, "Oh man, he's the greatest guy I've got working here. I can give him anything to do, and he'll come back to me in less time than I think it's going to take him to do it, and say, 'What else do you have for me to do?'" You know. And so it was just like a complete opposite of what the company was saying. And it was kind of interesting to me that the law being fulfilled, you know, this guy was really illegal. He respected the law. And had he not, I would have been in prison.
Yeah, yeah.
So he kind of got me out of their situation.
Yeah.
And then he did them dirty.
Yeah.
He took the whole company and reorganized it. My friends came to me and said, "I don't know what you did.
But
they moved me out of that company." He said, "I don't know what you did, but whatever you did, it's like heaven now."
And what year was this? What year was this?
This was 1968.
Yeah.
And I was transferred to a different company, and then I was medevac back to the States.
And all the while, you're not trying to be a good Christian or Adventist influence or representation. You're just a good person.
Well, they would say stuff like, if you had been raised an Adventist, why don't your dog tags say Seventh-day Adventist? You know, and when I went in, there was a question of, you know, what do you want on your dog tags? Catholic or Protestant? You know, well, I'm Protestant. Well, that's not Seventh-day Adventism. Them, see, Seventh-day Adventists, they're a cult.
Yeah.
So,
did you keep the name off because you didn't feel aligned to Adventism, or because you didn't want an extra bit of weight put on you for some kind of expectation?
I wasn't a practicing Adventist, but
No.
In fact, I told the sergeant major, I said, you know, they don't like me because I'm a conscience objector. And I said, I don't know whether this is right or wrong. All I know is that from my youth all the way up, I was taught, thou shalt not kill. You know? And I says, I've lived long enough to know when I violate my conscience, I suffer, you know, because my guilt will run me ragged.
Yeah.
And I said, so I don't know if this is right or wrong for anyone else. All I know is it's wrong for me. And I'm not trying to judge anybody. But, you know, they wanted me to embrace that rifle and go into color guard, glorifying the rifle and all kinds of other stuff. They were trying to get me to do all this stuff. And I was telling them, look, you know, this guy over here wants to be in color guard. You know, let him in. Don't put me in there. I don't want to glorify the weapon. You know?
I tell you what, to stand up for your conscience against such a military machine like that, that shows some fortitude.
Yeah. And so the law and how the law eventually justified me and brought them under condemnation, the people who had been against me, it was just amazing to me, you know. And I think in a way it gave me a kind of a big head. And after I began to realize theology, I began to realize that God was treating me as Jesus Christ deserved to be treated. And I was seeing the results of what his prayers would have accomplished rather than my own. And yet I was dead in my trespasses and sins. But after having gone through this, my experience in the military was such that I got into all kinds of trouble, and then I would come out of it, and it was always the law that would bring me out of it. And so I had this appreciation for the law being fulfilled, and so when I was reading the scriptures, of course, I was trying to conform myself to all the, statements within the scriptures that said, do this, don't do that. And, and like I said, it brought on the wrath of God. But I had this idea that somehow the law being fulfilled has something to do with the blessings that come. Because that's what happened to me in the service. And in a way, I think the service experience prepared me for the church. Because
by prepared, do you mean made you fall victim to the legal side of Adventism, or do you mean in a positive way?
There's a statement in the scriptures that says, I made your face like flint. When you have a government coming against you, trying to get you to relinquish your beliefs, that's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a saying that the military will make you either into a man or it will make you into a mental case.
Wow.
And they were trying to make me into a mental case.
Yeah. They wanted to break you.
Everything. Yeah. In fact, people that were heroes in Vietnam thought that I had gone through their training for special forces.
Wow.
And they said, you weren't in special forces, were you? And I said, no. And they said, well, you were a spook then. A spook was CIA.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I wasn't a spook either. They said, how do you know all this stuff?
Yeah.
And I said, well, they used it against you to see whether or not the enemy could break you, to see whether you had the stuff where you could resist being broken, because they have to have people that are, solid to be in special forces. In my case, they thought I was the enemy.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know?
And the irony is, they tried to break you, but it
Right. They
it
tried to
backfired
break
a
me
bit.
with all the features that they used on special forces.
Yeah.
Because that's what the enemy would do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Wow.
so in a way, I was prepared for, having conflict with the church. And in a way, it did me all right.
It did you all right, because when they tried to break you, it didn't work.
They were nothing compared to the government.
Hey, can we just pause for 1 second? Some people are reporting a bit of an issue with the video, so I've just got my monitor here. So
Okay.
just give me a moment, and then we're going to come back to, you were telling the story about Ashton, I think, and how you were kind of helping him, or you were going to let him know that his father was kind of going to dob him in if he didn't do it himself. So just we'll hold that thought for a second. I'm just going to check if we're back on. And if people watching, if they could, if people are watching, if they could just write a message to let us know that we are back on. It has been going live and hasn't dropped out this end, recording wise or Wi-Fi, or even on my own Facebook feed. So if it is dropping out, I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to watch it back later from the places where you dropped out, and there won't be any droppage, if that makes sense. So people are saying it is back on.
Okay.
And as far as I know, everyone, you'll be able to just watch back later and have no problems. And if there are problems, I'm recording this and I can put up a backup copy of it if you've missed anything. Because it's a fascinating story, Mike. We're very much enjoying it. And people have said he should write a book. Fascinating story. Wow, all this kind of stuff. So we're certainly touching a positive nerve
Well,
here, and you're telling a story from a very interesting perspective that a lot of people may not realize. So
yeah, and it's strange that God would find it, in his plan to use someone like myself, who really was at the dregs of society, to really mix with scholars from all over the globe. And and it just blows my mind that I've had experiences throughout my walk where I could tell that the Holy Spirit was just enabling everything to take place. I know that Standish comes up now and then in relationship to the people interested here. I had him as president of the college, and he misrepresented what we believed constantly, what you would call a straw man argument. He would present what we believed, which was a far cry from what we believed,
and then oppose it and attack it and
then
pull it down.
and then he would dismantle it and look like he was such a genius. And friends of mine decided to engage him in a Bible study in his home.
Is this Colin or Russell?
Colin. And Colin, they arranged for this Bible study and came to me and said, "Hey, we've got it. We're going to have a Bible study with Colin." And there were 3 or 4 of them. And they said, "You want to come?" And I said, "No." They said, "What? What do you mean? Why not?" I said, "Look, Colin's probably heard Des Ford. He's probably heard Robert Brunsmead. Who are we to, I mean, what are you expecting to happen here?"
Yeah.
Anyway, they kept after me and after me. Finally, I said, "Okay, I'll go, but I'm not planning to participate. I'll be, but I'll come as support for you guys." So they went, and the conversation, the perfectionism thing, I know that there's at least one person that's called me a liar on this. But the perfectionism thing in Tacoma Park, Maryland, in 1977 through 78, while Standish was there, was rampant. And there were multiple people, including him, that claimed that he had not sinned for over a year.
Like you say, making that statement is conceited.
Yeah.
And sinful.
And the thing of it is his mannerisms and everything kind of, were that way. I mean, he was impeccable in relationship to many things.
This is Colin?
Yeah. But anyway, he was dialoguing with my friend. My friend is talking justification. He's talking sanctification. They're at odds with one another. And he gains control of the conversation and gets my friend just angrier than all get out.
Because Colin's was a very intelligent man.
Yeah, and he's pointing to him and he's going, "See there? That's sin." And there was a person on the couch with me who was not in either camp, but he liked my friend and he liked the perfectionists. And he turned to me and he goes, you know, Colin's got a good point here. And I said, yeah, well, and I decided to distract him. And I just trusted, because I wasn't listening to their conversation. I just trusted that God would do this, you know, this illustration. And he did it perfectly. But anyway, I started talking to him saying, well, my friend, his theology allows him to know that he's sinning. And he's upset because he doesn't want to be sinning. But he's upset because he is sinning. And, you know, Colin's pointing that out. I said, Colin, on the other hand, has theology that doesn't allow him to see his sin. And I went and I pointed back, not hearing a word of what the conversation was. And as I pointed, this guy's attention went from me back to their conversation. And now Roger had control of the conversation, and Standish was as angry as Roger had been. And I said, now, tomorrow, Colin is going to say, I still haven't sinned in over a year. This guy's jaw just dropped. Like, whoa, you know?
And was Colin actually making those claims publicly?
Well, he made the claim, and this is how it always happened with me. They would make the claim while they were trying to sell. Oops, what happened? I went off.
Yeah, I think we're getting some dropouts.
Well, no, I just moved something, and okay. Anyway, they would say these things when they were trying to promote their viewpoint in a convincing way. See, we're making it happen. You know, this isn't just theoretical. We're sinless. We're living sinless lives. And so it would usually happen in a Bible study thing rather than publicly.
Right.
Okay.
The small group kind of
Right.
discussion.
Right. And he's trying to win us over to his viewpoint because he thinks that we're all, you know, following after. I don't know if he called it new theology.
That was a word that they often used, new theology.
I don't recall
Two words.
I don't recall the way that they described it. All I knew was we considered ourselves gospel men or gospel people. And he would trash our viewpoint constantly. Anyway.
At the time, were you aware, though, that, you know, much of, particularly great controversy, but much of Ellen White's writings kind of aligned with what they were saying? Did that bother you?
Well, Robert Brinsmead had a book out that he was going to do 2 different books. One of them was for limited circulation among the Adventist crowd. It was called The Theology of Ellen White. And this came out when I was still at Southern Missionary College. And I gave a copy of it to Edwin Zackerson, who was doing, I didn't know it at the time, but he was doing a doctorate on Ellen White. And I asked him if he'd like to look at this book that I had. And he looked it over for about a day and handed it back to me. And he says, I've never seen anything like this. What Brinsmead did was he took Ellen White's writings and went through and showed where she stood in relationship to systematic theology thinking. That's where you discuss God, you discuss man, you discuss Christ, you discuss the Holy Spirit, you discuss salvation, you discuss the church, all of these various things. And the only place that she differed with what I would call proper Protestant systematic theology was in eschatology, which are last day events. And in last day events, there was no unanimity, because in a way, systematic theology, you know, there's too many different viewpoints on end day events. They weren't solidified, you know, to any particular view. So I had that book with me, and I basically had heard from Bob that whenever you're discussing a viewpoint with an opposition party, you go on their ground. Colin was arguing sanctification. My friend was arguing justification. He was into Paul, and he was into James.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, my friend's not making it here. So I got to the point where I thought, there are too many good arguments that my friend's not making. So I started to explain how sanctification takes place in a systematic theology viewpoint. And then I went to justification, and then I went to glorification, which is where perfection comes in. And when I got through with that presentation, it was amazing. The Holy Spirit had, you know, given me the ability to say it so succinctly that Colin had no answer.
Wow.
In fact, he didn't know what to say. If he said anything, he would look ridiculous. And so he called off the study. And he said we'd meet in another couple weeks. Well, a couple weeks went by, and he didn't want to meet. And another couple weeks went by. And finally, in about a month and a half, he said, okay, we're back on. We went back. He pointed at me. He says, where were we last time? And in my head, I'm thinking, well, last time the Holy Spirit moved and you had no answer. I doubt that that's going to happen exactly the same today, because I know that the Holy Spirit, you don't use the Holy Spirit uses you. And
it's not like a PowerPoint.
Yeah. It's like it works or it doesn't. But so anyway, he's got me, you know, fingered, and, you know, where were we? And I started hemming and hawing and thinking, oh boy, what have I got myself into? And I noticed that he had Dr. Blanco, who was his second in command at college.
When you say college, was this Heartland?
No, this was Columbia Union College.
Oh, that's right. He was there for a while, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yes. And so Dr. Blanco happened to have his doctorate was in not education like Collins was. His doctorate was in systematic theology. So anyway, I'm stuttering and stammering and going through sanctification, justification, glorification, and all of this. And, you know, after a while, it seemed like it did flow a little bit, but it wasn't anything like the first time, you know. So anyway, I finish, and Standish looks over at Dr. Blanco. Dr. Blanco, can you address this? Dr. Blanco looked at him and said, sounds good to me. And Colin got purple with rage. He was so upset because the only reason why he had him there was to correct us. And when he said that there was no answer, and of course he couldn't come up with an answer himself the time before, I walked up to him afterwards and, tried to mend fences a little bit. I shook his hand and I said, look, I said, we're not saved by what we know. We are saved by who we know. And if you believe your faith is genuine in Jesus Christ, you are a brother, regardless of whether you know the things that I know or not. And we shook hands, and he seemed, more pleasant. And I started to walk away, but I thought, I can't leave it like this. So I don't know if you're familiar with the TV series Columbo.
Yeah.
Okay, you know how at the end, he's always disheveled and he looks like,
Yeah.
he looks like he's a bumbling idiot. And that fits me pretty well. So anyway, I start to walk away, and I did one of his Columbo moves where I turned around and I said, one more thing. I said, now that you know what we believe, if you make us sound like you know what we believe and tear us down like you have in the past, God will not hold you guiltless.
Mm.
And I really feared coming back to school the next year because I figured he's gonna know who I am.
Yeah.
And I always tried to go under the radar.
And you would have been in your 20s and he would have been in his 40s by then, I guess.
I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah.
And he was in his 40s.
Yeah.
And
So
he didn't return.
no, that's right.
And that confused me. I went, did Blanco turn him in for,
And
I had no idea what happened.
and that
but
was
I
Jack
found
Blanco.
I found out later. In fact, Lynn Bartlett was the first, or I don't think I'm saying Lynn's last name correctly. Lynn,
Yeah, you're right.
is it Bartlett?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, Lynn heard me telling this story at the General Conference in 2015. They happened to hold it in my backyard. That tells you where I live now. Anyway, Lynn was hearing me explain this, and I had no idea. I had guesses of what happened, but I had no idea. And he says, "Oh no," he said, "What happened is Colin Standish wanted to force the college to move out into the country, and if they wouldn't move out into the country, he wasn't going to return his principal."
Mm.
So his insisting on the college moving got me a reprieve
Yeah.
from having to face him.
And I guess did that then inspire him to start Heartland?
He didn't start Heartland right away. He went to Weimar.
That's right.
And
Someone
Weimar-
joked that Weimar was,
a more liberal.
yeah, more liberal than Heartland or something.
Well, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of the gospel people were into the self-supporting. Robert Grimsmead was self-supporting.
Yeah, yeah. It's flipped now, isn't it?
It's flipped, but the people that started Wheeling were friends of mine. They were gospel people.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. So he went out there and he didn't fit in because there's the gospel and then there's his viewpoint,
Yeah, yeah.
And so he had to start his own. And
Can I ask about your inspiration a lot has been coming from Robert Brinsmead, and this is during his the non-conservative awakening era. This is during his more liberal, progressive, righteousness by faith era.
yes, this was his Protestant era.
Protestant era, yeah.
Yeah, between 1971 and 1980,
Yeah.
Well, maybe 79.
And at this time,
I think in 79 he started to change, but it wasn't as apparent in 79 as it became in 81.
yeah.
In 81, he began to abandon the what I'd call paradoxes of Scripture, where the law to him was kind of negative instead of being positive. You can read the material in 1979 on righteousness by faith, and they interchange the gospel with legal. It is the legal solution to the problem. And there's the legal and the moral. The moral is sanctification. The legal is justification. And the legal is the gospel.
Interesting.
So all of a sudden he's starting to talk about the law in a negative way because, from what I understand, and I could be wrong, I don't know if he'll listen to this, but he began to think in terms of the fact that the law is not only the Ten Commandments, but it's actually Scripture. And that's correct. It's Torah. Torah is instruction. The books of the law are the books of Moses. The 5 books of Moses are Torah. But, you know, in the New Testament times, they could use the law as being all of Scripture, because sometimes they say, you know, the law, and then they'll quote from the Psalms, or they'll quote from one of the prophets. So the law means Scripture. And because of that, he began to think in terms of, well, all of my thinking in relationship to the law being the Ten Commandments is wrong. And I'm not quite sure exactly how he ended up
With that.
where he ended up.
Yeah.
But what I perceived was he was abandoning the systematic theology and going for biblical theology. Now, last night, I think you were talking to one of the guys that
John.
from Melinda.
Yeah, Dr. John Paulian.
Right. He was talking about systematic theology in a way of being eisegesis, where you kind of bring your own idea into what you think it is to the Scripture,
And then get the Scripture to interpret it the way you want.
Yeah, and so you're seeing your own viewpoint from, instead of seeing the viewpoint from the Scripture's point of view.
Like reverse straw man.
Yeah, so systematic theology has gotten a bad rap by a lot of people because they think in terms of, you know, Luther seeing it in relationship to his conflict with the Catholic Church and that type of thing. So he didn't get into the broader what we would call biblical theology.
Right.
N.T. Wright is big on this, biblical versus systematic theology.
So we're back to...
Sorry,
go ahead.
The thing that I want to point out is that systematic theology was based on seeing theology historically from a perspective of not one person's viewpoint, but this was the way that the Christian church understands how the relationship of God, the relationship of justification, the relationship with Christ, his natures, the church, and all of these various points that systematic theology emphasizes. So it's really historical rather than eisegesis. But
which is less subjective.
Right. Now, I know N.T. Wright had made the accusation that a lot of people that were into systematic theology would never get some of the stuff that he was getting out of the scriptures, because the scriptures go into, like, say, for instance, there's the theme of the new Exodus. There's a theme of the new creation. There's these other themes that are biblical themes that are in Paul that he thought were being neglected by those who were into systematic theology. And while there may be some truth to that, because the systematic theology didn't really go into that, he assumed that if you were into systematic theology, you wouldn't get these other things. Well, I got into the other things, even though I still value systematic theology. Dez's presentation at Palmdale was systematic theology at its best.
Now, just unpack Palmdale for us.
Palmdale was, resulted because people like, I think it was Wood and Herbert Douglass and these other people, there was a magazine that came out in 1974.
And Palmdale was 76, wasn't it?
Palmdale was 76, and in that Palmdale, or in that Review and Herald special issue, Righteousness by Faith, they basically presented what we would call Council of Trent Roman Catholicism, and they were countering present truth. That was, had its magazine on righteousness by faith. Are you a Catholic or are you a Protestant?
And who is behind present truth?
Robert Brimsmead.
Yeah.
And so...
Did that merge later into Verdict? Was that a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll come to that later.
There's an interesting part that I may have played in the name change.
Oh, good.
But that can be later if we have time.
We'll come to that. So back to Palmdale. So it's kind of, it was almost brought about because of what Brinsmead had been saying in the Present Truth magazine.
Exactly. And
Des Ford was invited to be on that research committee?
No. This was not a research committee. This was a hanging committee. They were going to hang Ford.
Right.
Because Ford had the same viewpoint
as Brinsmead. And this is where they started to say they were working together.
On righteousness by faith. Well, I don't know if they really started saying it at that point.
Okay.
But they were going to fire Ford at Palmdale over righteousness by faith.
So this is well before Glacier View, isn't it?
Yes.
The target, he was a target already.
It was 3.5 years, which is a really interesting year or time period in prophecy. It's 3.5 years between Palmdale, which happened in April of 1976, and the meeting that got Des in trouble for Glacier View.
Right.
Which happened in November of 79. That's 3.5 years. So I want that to sink in.
Yeah, and that wasn't Glacier View, and just so people that are watching get the dates right, that wasn't Glacier View. It wasn't the PUC forum meeting.
It was the PUC.
Oh, because that was the October 27.
I thought, yeah, that's right, October. I thought it was November. November's when he came to Tacoma Park.
Yeah. And
he came sometime in November. I helped move him into his apartment.
Awesome.
And that's where I met Des.
So you tell me the placement of the 3.5 years into prophecy. Are you
Well,
linking the that event to a prophetic kind of metaphor or
I
actual prediction?
between between Palmdale and the forum meeting, the gospel had its heyday in Adventism. It was much like what happened after 1888.
Right.
Okay, 1888 to 1891, when they
Yeah.
sent Ellen White to
Yeah.
Australia
Yeah.
to penalize
Wow.
her
Yes, I get what you're
for being
saying.
involved in it.
Yeah, I get
Three
what you're
and a half
saying.
years, three and a
Yeah.
half years.
Mm. Mm.
And so, all the statements that Ellen White made about the Holy Spirit descending
Yeah.
upon the meetings, that was that 3.5 years between 1888 and,
Interesting.
and 1891.
And I kind of almost see that as an opportunity time that could have,
Yeah,
in
exactly.
both eras, where
Yes,
Adventism could have really grasped
yes.
the gospel.
My connection in my family went back to the 1888. It was probably 1889,
Yeah,
but
smack in the
it
middle of
was
that.
during that gospel phase of 3.5 years
But isn't that
that
funny that
my
your ancestors were smack bang in the middle of it,
yeah,
as were you smack bang in the middle of it,
yeah, in a
100
way.
years later.
uh my grandmother had an interesting thing. She would teach Sabbath school, and if a minister didn't show up, which was often because they were a rural church, and I don't know, how well that they took care of them. But if the minister didn't show up, she would get up in the pulpit and preach. And then on Sunday, she'd go down the street and she'd teach Sunday school. And the
Wow.
Adventists were saying, now, Bird, this was her nickname, Bird, how can you do that? She says, I just teach the essentials. When she's down at the Sunday church, she didn't teach the Adventist distinctives. She just taught the essentials. She knew righteousness by faith really, really well because I have her Bible.
Wow.
She willed it to my father, who did not want to receive it.
Wow.
And I heard about it, and I thought it's interesting because I was converted shortly after her death by about 3 months.
Wow.
And I felt like I had inherited a spiritual gift from my grandmother in my conversion. So anyway, my dad wouldn't have anything to do with this, and his sister kept saying, Mom, put it in her will. She wanted you to have this. And he said, well, she bought us a Bible, and we have that one. That's good enough, So one day I heard this, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I said, in the scriptures, there's a thing called a spiritual inheritance. And he went, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And I said, I think she was trying to give your family, me and my siblings, the blessing that she wanted to give. Sometimes it was on the firstborn, a lot of times it was on the last. And my dad was the last of her 9 children. But she not only raised them, but she also raised some of the Martz kids. She raised Sam Martz and Jack Martz as her children because their mother died.
Okay.
And she also had some other people that she raised. But she was just, the dedicated Christian lady that was filled with the Spirit.
So back
Didn't-
back to Palmdale, when and not to just to get away from that story, because that kind of story is the heart, it's kind of the meat of these kind of conversations, when you stumble across people that have grasped this gospel and they've lived their life with it. So I don't want to in any way diminish that at all. In fact, I want to highlight that by saying that what an amazing woman, and incredible that you got to have the Bible and then look through it and see that no doubt she'd underlined things and made comments. And
She had her underlining for the essentials, and she had her underlining for the particulars.
in different
Both
colours.
were underlined. Yeah. Yeah.
So-
So she knew which was which.
Which, yeah. So by Palmdale, were you now an actual minister?
No, I was still in school.
Right.
I was at Southern Missionary in '76. I transferred from Southern Missionary because when I went to Southern Missionary, they wanted me to give them a reference, and I had lived in Fallbrook 2 times in the year of '73. The first time I lived with the people in the circulation department, and the second time I was staying with them, and the head elder said, I have a job that you can do running my ranch. And so I worked his ranch, instead of being part of the Present Truth team. And anyway, he was an educator, and the ranch was his father's. It was in, I don't know what, probate for the will. Anyway, so I worked for that ranch, and when they said I needed to have a reference, I said, well, do you know this head elder? And the guy said, oh yeah, I know him. He's a fine educator from California. I said, well, I worked for him, his father's ranch. So they called him up, and the next day they called me into the office and they said, tell me your problem. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Problem? What problem do I have? They kept saying, well, tell me your problem. And finally I got it out of them. And they said, what about this magazine? I said, oh, you mean Present Truth? Well, I'm a subscriber. Who else is subscribed in here at Southern Missionary College?
Wow.
I have no idea, Well, we have to accept people from every faith. And so we have to accept you as a student. But if anything ever takes place on campus, we'll know who the culprit is.
Who was saying that to you?
The administrator at Southern Missionary College. So I was a baptized member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church,
Yeah,
but they didn't recognize it.
They're saying
Local-
we accept multi-faith.
Yeah. The local church never accepted it either.
Yeah, and you're studying theology at this stage.
And I'm studying theology. Yeah, it's
To
really
be an
sad.
Adventist minister. Oh dear. Okay,
Yeah.
so back to Palmdale.
Well, I'm at Southern Missionary, and the reason why I had to leave there was I was working with some guys that were really into Morris Venden, righteousness by faith, Morris Venden, and I kept telling them our viewpoint, and they kept saying, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. And I kept saying, no, I don't think you're getting it yet.
Yeah.
And so for about a year, maybe a year and a half, we were in dialogue. Well, one of them decided to come to one of the camp meetings in Canby, Oregon. And he and his wife came to hear Robert Brinsmead. And during these meetings, they were talking about the This Is Life campaign that they were going to begin within, I don't know, a year or two. I think they started in 78.
These weren't official church camp meetings, were they? Adventist church camp meetings.
Grimsmead was thrown out of Adventism.
That's right, like 69 or something.
1961, I believe.
61, yeah. That's what I was going to say. They can't have been official church camps.
One of his relatives, I heard him say something about a meeting, and it might have been 58. I think he said it was 58. Cal Grimsmead.
Oh, Cal Brinsmead, yes, yeah, in one of the comments. Yeah. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. And so I got connected with them. The Camp Caroline meetings in 1973, Bob was trying to rally his base from the perfectionistic phase to win them over to his more Protestant views.
Yeah.
And so I knew a lot of the phases and a lot of his arguments of why this is better, and so I was just, the Holy Spirit could come sometimes so thick you could cut it with a knife. It was just incredible. We were on the top of this mountain in Southern California. We'd go down in the valley and have to get gasoline or something in the car or something. And it was like night and day. We were like up on Mount Sinai, and then we were down in the valley where people were worshiping the golden calf.
Yeah.
And it was this stark contrast. And so I was pretty sold on the fact that this was the movement that I was looking for, because I figured that a movement had to be happening because God's calling all the riffraff off the streets.
Yeah.
And I'm one of them.
And they were being drawn to Bob Brinsmead and his message.
Yeah. And, while I was studying,
I didn't realize that.
I kept arguing with the circulation manager, asking him, how does this, line up with James? And he keeps going, oh, let's go into Romans, I said, yeah, I'm understanding what you're saying about Romans, but how does it square with James? Well, Brinsmead came, and the other guy never satisfied my my question. But Brinsmead came along, and he goes, hey, Paul's talking about judgment in the realm of God. James is talking about judgment in the realm of man. Show me your faith, by your works. It's a man-centered judgment, justification. Whereas justification in Paul is talking about God.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm going, wow, okay. See, this is one of the paradoxes.
Yeah.
Scripture's filled with paradoxes. A lot of atheists say, hey, the scripture's really contradictory. I always go, hey, you're right. It is. And then go, well, you're a Christian. You can't be telling me that I'm right on this. What's the deal? I said, well, it really appears to be a contradiction.
Yeah.
But it really reveals the wisdom of God. I says, how can you be judged by faith apart from works of the law, and yet be judged according to the law?
Yeah.
That's a paradox. That seems to be contradictory.
And yet they're two separate things.
Well, yeah, and what's really neat, and what happened with Bob and Present Truth during the 71 to 79, and maybe beyond that, but I noticed a real stark difference in 81. Anyway, the paradoxes are when you get someone that can emphasize the divine sovereignty of God and freedom of choice, those are another paradox. When you get somebody that can blend between the two of those such a way that they convince the Calvinists that they're more Calvinist than Arminian.
Yeah.
And they get the Arminians to think they're more Arminian than they are Calvinist.
Yeah.
Edward Fudge had a book on the gospel called The Great Rescue or The Divine Rescue. I'm not sure which one it was, but he told me he had people from each side saying, endorsing his book. And then when they found out that the Calvinists endorsed it, the Arminians said, well, maybe I've got this wrong, because the Calvinist is saying that it's on their viewpoint.
Is it a little bit like if someone's speeding down the road, they come into a town, they don't see the change speed limit, and so they keep going the same speed, a policeman pulls him over, they go to court, they have to pay a fine. That's your James earthly thing, regardless of the heart of the person that's driving in the car, always accepted by the grace and love of Jesus.
Yes, because the law doesn't make exceptions for your perception of it.
Exactly, yeah. And for you not being aware that you just didn't see the sign, you can't use that as an excuse.
Right.
That's the James kind of law, which is the earthly law that will call you into judgment, and you'll have to receive the ramifications of breaking that law.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that is interesting. I got the trucking industry in South Texas to review their way of dealing with the law. I said, if you go by the rules, you don't have to worry about, the law. There may be a lawman who's and they take the law an extreme event, but they're really your friend if you're obeying the law.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the whole industry changed over several years based on the fact that we had never been going by the laws, what you would call a national standard in Texas.
Right.
We didn't have to do log books. We didn't have to do all kinds of stuff. And all the people that were driving were saying, we're not going to be able to make a living at this. And I said, you guys don't know much about how this works. But these standards that you've been violated because you didn't have to, abide by them, they're going to change what you get paid. I said, if you took all the hours that you work and take 40 hours and say, okay, this is regular time, and everything after that is double time or time and a half, which would be overtime. If you took the amount of hours you're working, you could make more money at McDonald's. Yeah. Because the employers are taking advantage of you.
Yeah. So instead of seeing the law as a hindrance, see that abiding by these codes and these standards, once these standards come into play,
the employers that's been taking advantage of you because you're willing to work 100 hours a week,
Yeah.
To make $20,000
It's like being a musician.
in a year. It's like you don't have a life.
Yeah.
And it's basically about like what enslavement was.
Yeah. So
And
the law frees you when you understand it from that perspective.
When you understand that the law protects you from being overworked, and your pay is going to come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
From what it was.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be able to hire every Tom, Dick, and Harry to drive a truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to be valued more.
Yeah,
so all you have to do is start abiding by those laws.
Yeah.
Because if you don't abide by the laws, your employer's going to love it. But if anything ever goes wrong, you're fired.
Yeah.
Because you didn't abide by the law.
Yeah. Fired,
See?
culpable, possibly.
And I used to have employers tell me, look, you can make so much more money if you just violate the law. I'd tell them, I'd say, I'm not only protecting myself, but I'm protecting you from lawsuits.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good way to look at it, because you can study the Galatians and Paul, and you can study James, and they both paradoxically go hand in hand from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And the law, a lot of people see Paul as anti-law, but that's the man of sinless, or that's the man of sin. They talk about the man of lawlessness. Okay, Christianity can be the man of lawlessness. By a lot of the way that we have people talking about the law in a negative way, talking about the Spirit in a positive way, and the Spirit was given on the day that the Torah was being celebrated. Pentecost is the third month after Passover. And the third month after Passover, Moses was up on the mountain. And God was speaking to the people. And they were frightened of his speech. Then he wrote it down in with his finger on tables of stone. And so the Spirit, just like the Word, I think Luther said, the Spirit comes riding in the carriage of the Word. The Word is the vehicle by which the Spirit moves. And so, when you're saying, I'm not under the law, I'm under the Spirit, are you saying you're not under the authority of God's Word? See, there's a lot of ways that people think.
Yeah.
Distortions. Christianity has all kinds of distortions.
And what you're talking about, the misunderstanding of this and why it's so important, is why the constant looping of tension just reoccurs within Adventism. It's kind of a fertile bed for the clash, because they're just not resolving this very point that you're talking about.
I love Adventists, especially those that are in gospel pockets.
Yeah.
I love the fellowship. There's no better fellowship that you can have.
Yeah.
Than Adventists that are gospel oriented.
And if you
but when you just go to be putting your time in every week, you hear these arguments in Sabbath school classes. It's like these arguments were settled back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Where have you been? It's like they're still arguing the viewpoint of perfection versus justification. What's justification? It's like,
because it feels like God.
Do I want to stunt my growth by just being isolated in this, Adventist ghetto?
It's like,
or do I want to go out and blend with other Christians, which is our calling, really, right? To blend with other Christians and have influence on them, to get their viewpoints on the negative law stuff back on a positive towards the law.
And I think it's interesting that the opportunity, if you look back at Adventist history, you were saying that 3.5 years after 1888, tremendous time, opportunity to understand, move forward, stop being hobbled. Perhaps nine, and there's several dates, but there's other ones like 1919 when they had that conference, and there was some excitement about, well, if we reveal the truth and the gospel, it will change Adventism in a good way. Those papers disappear, the minutes disappear. I think questions on doctrine, another amazing opportunity. The years following that birthed a lot of the this righteousness by faith in the 70s, Glacier View. There's these opportunities, and I guess that's what we're exploring, is why are these opportunities not grasped and run with like they have been in perhaps some other movements?
That, I believe, in a way, present truth verdict in its most valuable time of the 70s and early 80s was so impactful that it was doing what we, in our terminology, call the loud cry.
Yeah.
Edward Fudge has told me, when I explained to him that the Adventist viewpoint is we need to proclaim the gospel with the power of an angel.
I have a
Spirit is really, going to empower this message. And
I have a friend that is a gospel. Sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting. There's a bit of a delay sometimes, so I'm not telling when you finish saying something. Sorry. Just
the reason
to know.
The reason I believe is because they had the paradoxes down, and they were emphasizing the law, which, Edward Fudge told me, he said, we were into righteousness by faith, but there was nothing like what was coming out of present truth.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
That we were aware of. He was following it from the early 70s. And they don't show that in the movie. In fact, they don't make the connection to Brimsmead in the movie.
What movie?
The movie on his life, Hell and Mr. Fudge.
Oh,
Edward was hired by Bob to research the topic of hell.
Oh yes, yeah, I know this one. Yeah.
And Edward was a traditionalist, believing in eternal conscious torment.
Yeah.
And he thought that was the view that the Bible, had. And over time, he realized that there's very little support, if any, in Scripture for eternal conscious torment. He makes the plea at the end of his first edition to say which is very even-handed. He's not condemning the viewpoint that he grew up with, but he says, all I have uncovered, and he left no stone uncovered in the first edition. I think it was 500 and some odd pages. And Des Ford did a wonderful job promoting it. So did the people in the Evangelica, which Edward really appreciated. He didn't think that Bob promoted it as much, even though it was published by Bob's Verdict Publications. Verdict eventually gave him the rights to republish it because they wanted out of the publishing business. But that's because Bob started going off in a way outside of Christianity. And I still think that Bob has had some wonderful insights. I love him like a brother, I don't judge him in any way.
No.
He may know things that I don't know. I thought he might be, when he was into one phase where he was talking about Joshua ben Adam. This was back when a lot of the Muslims were, and I thought, well, maybe he's trying to make bridges into the Muslim world and, carry the gospel to them. I don't.
Did you see the interview I did with him?
Yeah, I loved it.
We had to close it a bit short because we hit the 3.5 hour mark, and I said to him, I've got to get him back because he started unpacking this really interesting topic about the Christianity splitting into the Pauline, which has become what Protestantism eventually was, to the James movement that just stayed within the Jews and then kind of died out a couple of hundred years later. That's going to be, if he's going to come back hopefully and continue on chatting about those thoughts. Yeah, I love the way he thinks. We've got to, because we're going to run out of time. Sure. There's some key things I want to discuss and cover, but just on
by the way,
yeah.
Jill said something about my wife. These are my wife and my two adult darling children.
Oh, that's lovely. And, how old are your daughters, and how much age are they apart?
They're 4 years apart, and I specifically wanted the 4 years spread because my father was 4 years younger than his sibling, and they were really close. And I was 4 years less than my nearest sibling, and we got along fantastic. And the 10-year spread works real well too, because my dad had a brother that was 10 years older. I have a brother that was 10 years older, and he was my oldest brother. And he and I really always got along really well, and so did my dad. But the 4 year spread was, I thought, ideal for children.
Yeah. Verdict, just quickly, how long did that publication kind of go under the kind of leadership of Bob? What time period?
I would say till 89. There's
and started when?
There's a YouTube channel that has the videos from his 85 to 88 or 9.
Because I must track that down, because a friend of mine who has done some recording in my studio, he's a Baptist, and he said to me last year, and this is how I became aware of the Verdict era, he said that he had every single, and he's shown me since, every single magazine that was put out from Verdict, and that he had never seen the gospel presented in that way, and was asking why it stopped. Where's the people now? So he has got this whole series, and he said it's the best explanation of the gospel he's ever heard.
See, that's why I was saying it was the loud cry that Adventism was supposed to do.
And interesting that Kenneth Samples, the mentor or protege of Walter Martin, said that the
same thing with Des.
The 991 page of Des's work on Righteous by Faith was the best portrayal of the gospel he's heard. And these are non-Adventist folk seeing something that our very own people decided to kind of push away.
They were, well, the way that I view it, and of course everybody has their viewpoint, but I think there's something to this. When I was at a seminary, Ellen White's grandson was trying to counter, I think it was Wieland, that brought
Arthur?
up,
Was it Arthur?
Arthur was trying to counter Wieland,
right?
Of Wieland and Short. Wieland was saying that Ellen White was basically banished to Australia, to the penal farm.
The
And
penal colony.
Ellen White knew the implication. And they basically taunted her with, if you have a vision or something, maybe we can change the call.
Mm.
And when she's in
Wow.
Australia, she writes, Jesus was tempted to use divine powers on his own behalf.
Mm.
Something that I think she knew well.
Mm.
She was livid at the call. She knew they were breaking up this 3.5 years of the Holy Spirit coming. She never received a call back from Australia.
Why didn't she reject the call?
Well, she basically says, I'm in the hand of God. He can do with me what he will.
And because she had
And
stated
what-
that the General Conference had high authority?
And what she did was she started Avondale College.
2 minutes down the
And-
road, just 2 minutes down that way.
Yeah, and she never received a call back. She came
She came back.
unannounced to the 1901
4, wasn't it? 401?
Minneapolis General Conference. She walked in unannounced and said, I was shown I was to be here.
And we're just going to pause there for a moment. I'm very much enjoying this interview of 6 years ago with Mike, aka Fleetwood. And yeah, just the perspective of that generation falling in love with the Des Ford gospel and the Verdict magazines. So yeah, this is me in 2026. We'll go back to 2020 in a moment. But I just wanted to thank very much today's sponsor, Moto Sapien, who is a fan of Graham Maxwell's work and is sponsoring today's program so that we can let you guys know of Graham Maxwell's videos and content that you can go and check out on speakwellofgod.org. There's a picture of the website, speakwellofgod.org, and conversations about God with Graham Maxwell and Can God Be Trusted are the two that Moto Sapien is particularly keen for you to check out. So thank you very much to Moto Sapien for sponsoring today's program. And we'll now get back to the interview with Mike, aka Fleetwood Mac. And you can check out, of course, Fleetwood's YouTube channel if you go to just simply look up Fleet WD1 on YouTube. Fleet WD1, just the numeral 1, and you can have access to a lot of content there that features Des Ford, and also the Fudge interviews maybe, or even movie that we just mentioned. Okay, back to 2020. Here's Mike. Wow.
And she came to prevent them from disfellowshipping Kellogg, because they were going to disfellowship him then. I think they later on did, but she basically said she basically indicted the organization for what happened.
Some of the things she said during that meeting.
Well, her words were so sharp that you could not at all fail to understand what she was saying.
Oh yeah.
They took her, sent her to Australia. She got the worst punishment of them all, okay? But they sent Wagner to England, where he apostatized. And he apostatized, and he started to bring Kellogg into the apostasy. And that's what she was trying to prevent them from disfellowshipping him because of that.
It would empower that connection.
Yeah, it was a pantheism.
Now we've got to come back because I want to. I'm just aware we're going to run out of time, and what I would love, Mike, is to also invite you back once the Glacier View series is finished. Of course, SDAQ&A interviews continue on. We've got lots of interesting ones to come, where we're going to unpack even more of this stuff. So this is not the end of our conversation, and we've got another half hour to go, but I just wanted to just bring back to, can you just cover briefly Palmdale, and then the PUC meeting and the impact it had on you, the forum meeting, and at what point were you did you graduate and become an Adventist pastor in this time frame?
I graduated in 1980.
Right. Oh, okay.
And I was blacklisted.
Like immediately?
Well, I had been told by the conference that hired me, you are our top pick of the graduating class this year. And that was in the fall. And in the spring, the same conference president came, sat down next to me, and he was asking me, what's this guy like, and what's his theology like, and how does this guy over here think, and and he went through just about the whole graduating class. And he looked at me and he goes, and when do you graduate again? And I knew he was telling me, I've been told not to hire you.
Wow.
And I know who did that. It was a teacher that I basically humiliated in class for using Standish's view of what Jeffrey Paxton believed instead of reading Paxton's book, which he always had told the students, don't take opposition people's view of what people believe. Go to the source, read the source. So he spent the whole class, with the exception of the last 5 minutes, denigrating, calling Paxton a Calvinist, which he was, who believes in once saved, always saved, which he doesn't. He believes in the third use of the law, which is sanctification, is, the law is for us to follow, not to skate on, once saved, always saved type. But anyway, I knew he was getting all of this stuff from Standish because I heard Standish saying it all the time. And so I sat there, I prayed for the whole class, period, saying, Lord, get him on the subject today. If he doesn't get on the subject today, give me the last 5 minutes. And so I began at the last 5 minutes. I said, you sound like you're quite the expert on this Jeffrey Paxton fellow.
This is your lecturer?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I said, so you've read his book? Well, I've read parts of it. Parts of it? You mean you haven't read the book? You've only read parts of the book?
And was this in class?
This was in class. And a fellow classmate at the time eventually worked for Des. I introduced him to Des after I got to know Des by moving him in. I introduced Brad McIntyre. He was in the class at the same time, and he went like this so that the teacher didn't see his signal. But he went, And after the class, as we walked out, Brad said, I hope you know that you won't get a call.
Wow.
And the interesting thing was, not only was he a teacher, at this point, that's all he was.
Yeah.
But my graduating senior year, he was the head of the department, acting
Right.
head, because the other head of the department had a heart attack.
So he had
So he
suddenly a
had
lot
the
more power to
he
diminish
had the
your
ability to make sure that I didn't get a call.
So at what point did you come across Des Ford's teachings in all of this?
I started hearing Des Ford's teaching in '73 when I was working in the circulation department.
Of Present Truth.
Present Truth. We would listen to tapes. We would do devotionals, often from Ellen White. Ricky, this is comical. Ricky had this habit of taking arguments that we had.
Ricky who?
And he was the circulation manager in 1973. Anyway, Ricky would take the arguments that we were having, and he would read his side of the viewpoint into the devotionals we were having from Ellen White.
Right.
His wife would go, "Now, Ricky." and I was ignorant. I was just going, "Oh man, I'm really off now because Ellen White's, come against my view." But
I like his sense of humor.
Ricky was a genius, but he has some difficulties theologically, but he's a fantastic, and he knows the gospel.
Mm.
It's just when he gets into other things.
And so they would raise Des Ford, the topic of Des Ford, or did they bring out some writings of his during that time?
In '73, it was either writings or tapes. I think it was tapes, but it was on the sinful nature of Christ.
Right.
Which also came up in Palmdale.
Right.
And I believe Jill was the one who was spearheading some of the nature of Christ studying, or the viewpoint. I was not aware that there were Adventists who believed that Christ had a sinful nature. I found that out when I got home and started interacting with some of the old school Adventists at my local church. And they basically said, when I said Christ had a sinless nature, they said, no, he had a sinful nature. And that's all part of the thing to where if he could overcome his sin, then we can overcome our sin.
Yeah, that's right. That's why, and in questions on doctrine, the church shifted their public status, statement on what they believed, and that's why Andreessen and the Standish brothers and the others became so upset, because to shift the nature of Christ.
And when I went to
they could no longer say, well, if Christ did it, so can we.
Yeah. Now, also, while I was at Southern Missionary College, I think John brought up Raul Dederin. Raul Dederin came to Southern Missionary College and presented basically the same view that I had heard through the Fords.
Right.
And of course, he, again, was into the systematic theology view, as well as a lot of other people. What happened at Palmdale was there were too many scholars that said you can't throw Des out over this. This is really, this is systematic theology at its best.
And is this why the famous rumor has gone around that there are no minutes or any there's no material
I have
left?
no idea. I have no idea about that. I have
Because
the
they
book.
couldn't. They were essentially brought together to be able to find, to be able to kind of dismiss the teachings of Des based on the Bible, but they couldn't do that, so they kind of eventually disbanded.
Yes. Well, I don't know exactly how long the conference was, but I have the booklet that was published that has all of Des's presentation in it.
Right. See, I might be
And-
confusing the. I think I'm confusing this with something else, actually. So
Well-
those watching perhaps ignore some of what I'm saying to do with this.
The
I think I'm referring to a different gathering.
the critical place where Adventism, what we would call the traditional view, departs is they include sanctification into the gospel.
Yeah.
And Des made a clear distinction, which is systematic theology at its best. And he, and Jill can verify this, he apparently gained an insight into that distinction, that necessary distinction, through Present Truth in its early 70s. And because, Bob was surprised that he had Roman Catholic theology when he looked into what Roman Catholics taught.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was surprised about it. And so he had all these different magazines asking, are you a Catholic or are you a Protestant? And when I went through and took the test, I was a Catholic too, because I had heard all of these things in Sabbath school class that were wrong.
Mm.
And so that clear distinction that was being made between sanctification, which is God's work in you, as opposed to justification, which is God's work for you.
Yeah.
Now, God's work for you causes God's work in you. But God's work in you never causes God's work for you.
Yeah. That's a good way of saying it.
And so a lot of the people struggle with this sanctification, and then they think, well, if we believe like Des Ford, then we just throw out everything and we don't have to believe anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there are people that do that, but they're not people that understand systematic theology.
Yeah.
You get people like
Maybe even Bob Brinsmead himself now would.
James Buchanan on justification by faith. His work is as standard as it gets on systematic theology, and there's this distinction between justification and sanctification. God oftentimes, when you begin to see this thread, you see it all the way through Scripture. God is constantly telling the Israelites, you're not going into the promised land because of your righteousness.
No.
You're going there because of my work for you.
It's your birthright.
Well, it's not the birthright. It's I'm accomplishing this. My name is, I'm being covenantally faithful because I promised this without obligation to Abraham. Okay? And Paul argues when Sinai happens, it did not negate what the promise was to Abraham. The promise of Abraham is actually the new covenant. It's the basis of the new covenant, but it predates the old covenant. God promised, I will accomplish these things. The ceremony was dividing two halves of animals, and the covenanting partners were to pass back and forth between these covenanting partners and pledge their obligations. And Abraham fell into a prophetic trance. He was in a prophetic sleep, and he saw God pass through in the form of a fire pot. This fire pot passed back and forth in between the halves of the animals and said, I'm going to do these things. I promise. Abraham had no obligation. Even circumcision didn't happen for 30 some years. It was 30 years later when circumcision came in. And that was to be a sign of the covenant. But he was basically accepted by faith, apart from any deeds of the law. But his deeds, after he was circumcised, and he offers up his son in type, and then God prevents him from carrying it out. You know, you stop and think, at the time, the custom of child sacrifice was not anything out of the ordinary. But God's saying, hey, sacrifice your only begotten son. And he goes, yes, sir. Okay. And then God prevents him from doing it. Well, later on in the Torah, it's forbidden. Child sacrifice is forbidden in the Torah. And that's why a lot of the Jews have trouble with Jesus as God's son being sacrificed.
Right.
So, you know, and I think you were saying something about having this guy that comes back from warfare and his daughter comes out.
Yeah,
and he had committed to sacrifice. That was forbidden.
Yeah.
You know, but he had pledged it, and his daughter said, she went along with it. She said, you know, if you pledged it, then you need to do it.
That's how they got out of it, by saying she went along with it.
Well, you know, that's what the scriptures reveal. A lot of people don't realize this, but you know, there's a lot of similarities to cultish things that were pagan. You know, people talk about the blood and the sacrifice and all of this stuff. It's pagan. And, you know, they want to back off away from substitutionary atonement, that type of thing. Well, the thing of it is God communicates to man according to what man knows, not according to what they don't know. And so he communicates to man in terms that they understand. But then he keeps them from making it into, you know, what the nations around them are doing. With Abraham, he prevents him from sacrificing his son. See? And so he shows that the God that you're serving is better than the God of the neighbors. And so you have this all the way through Scripture, and you know, we can't divorce and say, well, because pagan sacrifices, you know, all of this stuff came about because of pagan sacrifices. Yes, but God was the one who sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
And you know, it talks about the name of God and the power in the name. And the interesting thing is, every time in these scriptures where you see the power of the name, there's this litany of things that God has done, from creation to the Exodus and redemption to, you know, King David. And I mean, you have all of these lists of things that God has accomplished. and the power comes from the name. Actually, the power comes from the acts of God. God acts, and his name is not a pronoun. His name is I am, or I will be, or to be. That's action. It's like a verb.
Yeah, like love. Love is a verb.
Oh man.
Can you, because we're running out of time, we'll have to stop in about 5 minutes, and we'll definitely get you back to have part 2 and unpack this some more. But I'm interested in what your feelings were when you heard the news of Glacier View and the defrocking, and were you aware of the consensus statement and then the political manoeuvring of the 10-point? And we're just going to thank one more time, because we are coming to the end of this interview, Moto Sapien for sponsoring today's program. Really appreciate that, Moto Sapien. And if you would like to follow some of Moto Sapien's passion with the message of Graham Maxwell, he's encouraging people to go and check out speakingwellofgod.org. And there's an incredible amount of resources there. I really knew hardly anything about Graham Maxwell until I met online Moto Sapien. And so as part of, what he's really hoping to do is raise awareness of this incredible speaker and theologian, academic and scholar, Graham Maxwell. Yeah, so to help raise awareness for that, he has sponsored today's program and asked me to share this link, speakingwellofgod.org. A lot of people, when they sponsor one of the episodes, they're sharing a book link or a website link, and Moto Sapien is sharing a link that he is passionate about, speaking well of God, conversations about God, and can God be trusted? And they're all there in video form, easy to watch at speakingwellofgod.com. So thank you very much to Moto Sapien for sponsoring today's program. Now we'll get back to the interview. We're listening to an interview with Mike, aka Fleetwood, from 2020, season 2, episode 36. And I've just asked Mike to share how he felt when he heard about the defrocking of Des Ford. Let's see let's find out what his answer was. Statement. What was your awareness of the political moves that were going on? Why do you think they were there, and how did you feel when you heard of about the defrocking?
Because I wasn't hired, another gospel man that wanted them to hire me had me working with him in evangelism at the time of Glacier View. And okay. He had not only me working with him, but he had seminarian students working with him as well. And he was visibly shaken by the outcome. He could not believe what he was hearing. And we were working in evangelism, and I kind of suspected this because, see, I was in Tacoma Park when he arrived.
Yeah. And
there was a lynch mob mentality throughout Tacoma Park and suburbs of the General Conference. Everyone was out after Dez's head.
Why do you think there's such a resistance?
He was not allowed to speak anywhere but on the campus church. And that was only because the man who did that was very brave.
Who was that man?
That was, oh boy, I'm trying to think. I can see him, picture him. Jill would know.
She might write it on the wall. I'm just checking
Yeah.
on the monitor if she's writing anything about that.
Yeah, he was the monitor when Paxton came. Paxton was banned from everywhere except one place that was a rebel church, and that was the church that this teacher was trying to prevent us from going to hear him. And that was out in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland. Anyway, there was a forum meeting that was organized. That was the only official meeting that Paxton was able to get to. They had 4 top scholars that are grilling Paxton, and they're going to work him over. And James Londas was the pastor. He was the moderator. And Paxton is handling everybody like you could not believe. I mean, he was really on his game. It was his only, time to speak in the whole area. So anyway, there were several thousand people in the audience. And Jeffrey was saying that his intent with writing the book was to get Adventists to come clear on what the gospel is. And Londas said, "Oh, that." But he said it where you couldn't hear it. And Jeffrey Paxton said, they said, would you mind speaking up in the mic and let everybody know what you said? And so Londas says, oh, that. He said, now, he says, I'd like you to present the gospel. And Londas gave the same exact sermon that he had given when I requested the gospel not more than a month before. And it didn't satisfy me. And it surely didn't satisfy Paxton. But Paxton was kind enough and gentle enough to say more or less, not in these exact words, but more or less, good try, but no cigar.
Sorry, that cut out. Just say that again.
Good try, but no cigar.
Right.
In other words, you didn't quite make it to the gospel that I'm looking for.
What was Paxton's book called again?
The Shaking of Adventism.
Yeah.
And the shaking was going to take place because of the gospel, which it did, between Palmdale and the meeting at PUC. Okay, and this is in between that time. And Paxton emphasizes Des and says Des is one of the bright shining lights in this regard. I think it might have been after Palmdale.
So why
that book was written? In fact, I think it was. And so Paxton was saying, you need to listen to this guy because he's got it. Well, anyway, Londas was pricked enough, and Londas was, if there's 5,000 people in a church and you have this form to fill out, what would you like the sermon to be on? And I write the gospel. Very next week, the very next Sabbath, that's the topic. This is a guy who's conscientious. He might have a sensitive conscience like Des, like Edward Fudge, like I myself, not to the degree of Edward Fudge or probably Des, but, anyway, sensitive conscience is a really, really good thing to have. Because when you understand the gospel, it just frees you from all the obligations that you felt, you have to have, And so the gospel was so sweet. I mean, it made me seem like I was on a cloud, and it made sense of all my questionings of why did God do this and how is this happening, you know? And the Holy Spirit was leading me up to the point of understanding the gospel. And Bob had this theory that it was for immature people. I think he kind of thought in regard to Ellen White, maybe. And the deeper she got into the gospel, which she did, she was good on the gospel. She had the problem of distinguishing justification and sanctification at times. But other times she was so clear that it had nothing to do with your sanctification. And you know, but those who like to tout her, like the Standishes and stuff, they isolate just the views that support their viewpoint. She said, if you want to use, you know, my writings, study the Bible. Get your viewpoints out of the Bible. Then you'll understand what I'm saying. That's true. Ellen White could be as the law would be as serious as Moses, and the gospel as serious as Jesus Christ.
If you feel, and we'll have to close because we've got our next interview. I need to get the link set up, but I really have enjoyed this conversation, and I'm thrilled at witnessing your passion for the gospel, as you have taken on to believe it, and how it's impacted your life in an obviously positive way. Just in closing, very quickly, let me know why you think that this joy, this gospel, this thing that even Ellen White grasped, when it's had a chance to get a foothold within Adventism over the times we've talked about, why has it not only been not watered or fostered, it's been covered up, suppressed, or even rooted out? Why is this happening?
It's the age-old story. Those of the Spirit are persecuted by those of the flesh. It goes all the way back to Cain and Abel. You know, Abel did something that the Lord was impressed by, and Cain was upset. Right. Took his life. Okay? Right. And so the spiritual conflict is at work. And, you know, people may not like this, but I think I had begun to say that Ellen White was basically exiled to Australia as a form of punishment for her involvement in the Righteousness by Faith movement of 1888 to 1891. But they never gave her a call back. And I believe that the Spirit was resurrected through Desmond Ford and Robert Grimsmead, especially Grimsmead of the 70s and early 80s. And that Spirit got rebuffed just as Ellen White was rebuffed.
Yeah.
And so it's a spiritual warfare that goes on. And people that don't understand what's at stake here, it's biblical views versus concocted views of man, because Catholicism is the views having the eyes of man. And Adventists who have the doctrines that they believe are, you know, correct, where they're blending sanctification and justification, have the eyes of man.
Who are the Bob Brinsmeads and Des Fords of Adventism today?
I believe that there are people I'm running around with people in, in theological circles that are doing about what Bob was doing in magazine form, but they're doing it in video form today.
Can you
And
can you
that's
refer
the,
us some people's links that you'd recommend our viewers go and watch?
well, my channel has those videos.
And Jill has given the link for us on down below as well. So,
The Lanier Theological Library was started by Edward's boss, who was actually, he asked Edward to mentor him when he first came to Houston. So he was being mentored by, and he did that because he recognized Edward Fudge's articles from Verdict magazine. And Mark had no idea that I had a connection to Brinsmead until many years after we were working together. And there was an event that Bob spoke to Edward about his work. And that video was on display. And afterwards, Edward ran up to me going, did you have anything to do with this? And I said, well, I prayed about it. I wanted it to happen. But, it was people from the Rethinking Hell. There was an Australian, Peter Grice, who took it upon himself to go see if Bob wanted to have any words to say to Edward. And it really made Edward's day. I mean, Edward was really moved, but Mark knew Edward, but never knew my connection to Edward had roots in Present Truth and Verdict. See, Edward was like sitting across the table from the Apostle Paul, but he would relate to me in a way of elevating me to being like the Apostle John. I could tell Edward why all these cultural things that always puzzled him, why did they do this? And what was this all about? I could say, well, from an Adventist perspective, they were into, the healthy diet and this type of thing. And, and why, there were issues that would come up that culturally they didn't understand. I remember saying to them after we read a few letters to the editor, there was one in particular that kept coming, and it said, who are you guys? And they weren't picking up on the compliment. And I said, this comes from a movie. Of course, they didn't go to movies, so they had no idea. I said, these outlaws are doing everything they can to avoid being tracked. And every trick in the book, they try, and they think, nothing's working. Who are these guys? So you're like the super lawmen of Christianity, which is really true. And that's what gave the power to the gospel. They took the law and put it in the context.
Is there anyone today, though, that is a lightning rod like Des Ford that is going to bring accountability to the church? It seems to me there's so much suppression. We've got the compliance document getting more strength. There seems to be a lot of people behind the scenes doing wonderful things and saying wonderful things. But is there someone they can kind of go to really bring this to a head?
I don't get caught up in the Adventism's issues, because really, I've grown like incredibly by not being tied to
Adventism.
But when I do go, I will tell you that I have a lot of people who respect what I say in
Mm.
Sabbath school class or whatever. I had swore I would never preach again or teach again, but I had an incident where a friend of ours, I think it was the wife of the person that I interned under, she knew my passion for the gospel, and they had a pretty good gospel preacher.
Mm.
And he asked me, he said, would you help me with this church in, about 50 miles south of here? And I went home and I told my wife, I said, it's strange. I didn't say no. And I always said no. I resigned for a reason. Why do you want me to teach? Why do you want me to preach? I resigned for a reason.
You should be keeping me. You should be keeping me away.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to
I'm
say
trouble.
anything controversial, are you? Anyway, I told my wife, I said, I don't know what this is, but I didn't say no, and I just had a hunch that maybe God wanted me to do it, and I had a dream the next Monday, and he revealed to me what I was supposed to speak on, and it was all about seeds being out in the desert where they were neglected. Like this church was neglected. There were 7 people who were going in attendance, and oftentimes there'd only be 3 or 2 of them. Sometimes only 1. But anyway, you can have a seed sitting in the desert for hundreds of years. All it takes is a little moisture.
Yeah.
And the moisture comes, and all of a sudden it blossoms.
Hey, we're going
And
to
that's exactly what happened there.
We're going to have to wrap it up, but I think what you've just said there is a really important thing, and I'm glad that you had that kind of dream, because maybe what's happening now within Adventism is just lots of these little seeds. Maybe there's no one person lightning rod about to come and save the day. Maybe it's just about all these, because as I've listened to the interviews, as I've interviewed people, I can hear people preaching the gospel through these different interviews, and maybe it's just people from all over the world planting the seeds that this gospel movement of Adventists that you've called what did you say, the Adventist gospel?
God is doing things that are just amazing.
Yeah, and maybe
I don't know if you're aware of Max Lucado, but Max Lucado basically, I think, wrote a note to Edward Fudd saying that he learned grace from one of his books in the 70s, and of course, Edward was into present truth at the time. So indirectly, Des and Des's influence was there with Max Lucado.
Watered another seed.
Yeah, and I mean, Max Lucado is about as good on grace as you'll get anywhere. And he's reaching thousands and thousands. What is happening? And he was part of this group of Edward Fudge, that they were persecuting those people like Adventism was persecuting our people in the gospel. Okay, but they are having success, whereas the Adventism drove all of those the gospel people underground, and so they couldn't talk about it.
But maybe the gospel people are now underground and going to come through like potatoes.
Well, Adventism is behind the curve. They're behind the curve right now. Things are happening outside of Adventism that should have been happening through Adventism.
Well, Lynn Bartlett was mentioning, was it Tim Keeler?
Yeah, Keller. I watched
Keller.
A few. Yeah,
And,
I watched a few of his videos. And
yeah, well,
really
that inspired me to go and check him out, and I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah,
Hey, Mike, we are going to have to leave it.
Sure.
I've got to send a link to Dr. Eliezer Gonzalez, who's coming up next.
I thought he was coming up tomorrow.
No, today 2 o'clock, 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
um,
Sorry, Ellie.
Thanks.
Sorry, Ellie. I've helped them on their YouTube channel.
Yes, Jill was saying.
I'm involved in about 7 different YouTube channels.
I can't wait to go and explore your channel more. Actually, you've
Fleet WD1 is
Yeah.
the spiritual, and if
And
you like live
the link
music,
to it
you
as
might
well.
want to check out Fleet WD-MC.
I'll be following the links to that as well.
I've got them both on my Facebook profile.
Yeah.
I think the first one is top, which goes back to the spiritual. But I don't make as much distinction between spiritual and
No, neither do I.
because there's a lot of people that are into music that may not be Christians, but they have spiritual depth to what they're presenting.
Exactly, and you, if you try and define it, you can't let it flow. Like, for example, that Bush Night video that I posted the other day, someone reminded me that night, because I was open to the flow, we ended up bringing the kids right down, sitting them down, singing Amazing Grace, Old Rugged Cross.
Right.
It was this, so you can go from secular to spiritual if you don't get so hung up on defining what each has to be. Of course, you've got to be appropriate. You can't go to a funeral and play Sweet Home Alabama. Well, maybe you can, but
When I came into the church, they were burning albums, all the rock albums.
yeah.
And I didn't go that far, but I gave all of mine away after I listened to a couple lyrics. And in Strange Brew, Kill What's Inside of You. Yeah, that's a little dark. Maybe that's
Might just be a metaphor like Revelation.
not what I want. But anyway, there was a guy from the White Estate that came and gave us an introduction to hymnal. The hymnals have several different hymns that have the same tune. And do you know why that is?
Well, they were from like secular.
Yeah, but do you know why they have the repeated
Oh
the
no,
same
tell me.
tune?
No.
The ones that had the same tunes were ones that were done to Swanee River or Dixie.
Yeah.
They were bar tunes like the other bar tunes
Yeah.
that we have that we think are
Yeah.
they're from
I know.
God.
I
but
think
they were
a
bar
mighty.
tunes.
I think a mighty fortress is one of those songs.
I don't think so because it would have been a bar tune because it was Luther.
Yeah.
He loved the door.
And
The
Elvis Presley, "Love Me Tender." "Love Me Tender" was from a popular traditional melody. We've got to go.
Yeah.
Got to go.
Okay.
Good catching up with you, Mike, and seeing you in person, and getting a bit of your passion for life and the gospel that means so much to you.
Well, you have an exclusive because I've never videotaped myself, and
There we go.
it's never been about me. My channel was about people that I thought would be worth other people's time.
Yeah. Well, I really
I-
appreciate you.
I don't think that I'm in that category.
I appreciate you breaking your policy there. Mate, until next time,
Okay.
talk soon. And there we go. That was my boy, Moto Sapien, actually, who has sponsored today's program, often says and I think Gillian says it too, the long goodbyes of SDAQ&A. Oh dear. One day I'll go through and edit them all so they're just brief and succinct. So yeah, go and check out Fleetwood. There you can see Fleet WD1, the numerical number there. And also don't forget to go and see this website. Let me just find it again. Hopefully I haven't. Here we go. This is Speaking Well of God. And today's program, as I've mentioned a couple of times, was sponsored by Moto Sapien, who is a regular viewer and chat writer. Is that the word? He engages in the chat quite often, and he has sponsored today's program, number 6 of season 2. And he's encouraging you guys, anyone watching, just go and look at this this website, speakingwellofgod.org, and you can find out more about Graham Maxwell. So thank you, Moto Sapien. Really appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for watching today. Tomorrow we have our weekly Good News Fellowship, where we just look at the good news of the gospel, unfiltered, and that's at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time Thursday, and Friday 12:30 lunchtime New South Wales time Australia. Now, I don't know when you're listening to this down the track, but Frank Merendino is our special guest coming up tomorrow to present the gospel for us. And look forward to seeing you all again next week. I may even just do a little surprise Eliezer Gonzalez upload. I might even do that because, 6 years ago, I would have been right now frantically sending him the link, and we went straight into another interview. I'll check in a few minutes if I have time, and I might just do a little surprise go live with Ellie. So, yeah, see how we go. If not, see you next week.